cassette number 5. Most literature workers miss 2 or 3 almost sales every day, and sometimes, like fish, it is the big ones that get away. You have them out of the water, almost into the boat, when some hidden instinctive fear causes them to hesitate, pull themselves free of the book, and splash back into the pond of procrastination. As God's messenger tells us, Satan at this point is close beside the one to whom the book is offered, and is urging reasons why it should not be accepted. In fact, there is a natural, wretched human tendency to postpone a decision. Give me your name and address, and I'll let you know when we can do it, etc. Successful literature workers learn how to overcome this hesitation and move the minds of their prospects onto decision and action. Elder Bruce M. Wickwire, Associate Publishing Secretary of the General Conference, better known around the world as Livewire, has been a strong, successful publishing leader through the years. He has trained hundreds of literature evangelists in the Southwestern Union, Columbia Union, Far Eastern Division, and Northern Europe West Africa Division. Wherever he has gone, the work has moved forward. He knows what makes literature evangelists champions. Bruce Wickwire, tell us the secrets of the champions.
Secrets of the champions. When we think of champions, it is usually in connection with worthwhile endeavors. The pages of history are filled with stories of conquests and achievements by self-disciplined men. Among the greatest achievements is the Bible, the result of godly men cooperating with God in recording heaven's messages to man. A few years ago, man, through science, released the atom and flew faster than sound. He stood at the very edge of his planet and peered into space. Today, he peers back to his Earth from space. His wildest dream has come true. The world marvels at the achievements of determined and dedicated men of science. It is with amazement and great respect that we accept the discoveries of history's champions who have given us laws to govern millions, searched out the mysteries of the stars, discovered secrets of the earth, found its minerals, often miles below the surface, and have laced land, sea, air, and space with highways for men to travel upon. Yet, the greatest science is the science of soul winning, leading men, women, youth, and children to Christ. When the final moments of human history are being penned, when battlefields become quiet as man's mighty engines cool, and the sound of death-dealing rockets are forever silenced, God will say to the real champions, "Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom." Then, champions of every age and from each nation and from every tribe will respond. They will be those who were the hinges of history's gates, persons of power. What are the secrets of champions? You want to know. It may surprise you, it may even disappoint you when I tell you that champions have no actual secrets. We call them secrets for want of a better word. But champions are ordinary individuals with the same opportunities which you have. They walk the same streets. They sit at the same tables. They eat the same food and breathe the same air. They have the same number of hours in each day and live in the same world with you. What is it, then, that sets the champion apart from the ordinary individual? Too often we fail to look beyond impressive results produced by champions to search for keys and reasons which motivate them. Few are wise enough to observe or analyze champions in their working clothes. Let us analyze and list a few secrets of gospel-selling champions. It all begins with proper choices. First, champions choose God as partner and guide. They look beyond the surface changes about them. They realize that above all is God. The gospel-selling champion chooses the path of him who pleased not himself, Seekest thou great things for thyself? Seek them not. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. Gospel champions wisely acknowledge that man's most difficult task is to give oneself completely to God, to hold nothing back. It is also important to accept your limitations and recognize that there are some things we have no power to alter. Those things we leave in the hands of our great partner. Second, champions choose to help humanity. In viewing life, the champion recognizes that that only is important which is eternal. In looking about, he sees his fellow man, caught in the predicament of sin, a captive of Satan, and a slave entangled in the snares of deep sin from which, of himself, he cannot untangle. His soul is stirred. He, like the children of Issachar, knows what he ought to do, that a soul-winning work is to be done. No longer are his paramount interests his herds, the extra chrome, thick rugs, gold, silver, or organizational position. Only let me be employed by Christ for my fellow men are now his words. He girds himself for action. Third, champions choose to be true to duty. With conviction, positive and firm, champions set forth upon the great arena of gospel selling like a strong man to run a race, trained for every motion, with every fiber of his soul and body conditioned, he goes forth to meet the people. With tact born of divine love, he begins his house-to-house search for souls. The broader his sympathies for man, the greater is his success. When a champion moves, there is momentum. Wherever he stands, there is strength. Champions have no fear of critics. They only pity them, for critics are men who have failed or who are in the shackles of fear. Nothing is so strong as self-forgetfulness, and nothing is so weak in man as selfishness. To stand with the champions, you must crawl out of your narrow shell, stand up, throw your mind, your heart, and your hand into your work. Fourth, champions choose to make proper use of time. Time is the very thing life is made of. Most people are great wasters of time. Champions place greater value on time than a banker places on his money. Money loses value somewhere in the world each day, but time maintains its value. A dying man will gladly exchange his wealth for a little more time. A doctor taught me great lessons in time and organization. Each night he listed things to do the next day. He accomplished more in one day than many men accomplish in a week. The need for men who can manage time well is more critical than the world's energy crisis. Honesty with time, man's greatest talent, is in greater demand than Earth's entire oil supply. Never is reward offered for lost time. Time lost is gone forever. Champions make careful use of time. Fifth, champions choose to be diligent. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. Success requires diligent preparation, spiritually, mentally, and physically. Diligence is founded on solid habits. Obedience to duty is the very core of character and success. Success is never the result of an accident. Man has just one opportunity to life's racetrack. There is need for preparation and planning in order to join the champions. Preparation requires effort. Up early, study, and the ability to endure. There is no such thing as a lazy champion. Even his habits of eating, sleeping, and exercise measure his success. Self-discipline is a priority with champions. They set goals and march until they touch them. Where there are no goals, there are no champions. I would like to mention 3 champions among the many whom I have met in the world. One was born with a cleft mouth. His disfigurement was so great at birth that his father suggested to the doctor that it might be advisable to not allow the child to live. Undaunted by physical handicap, he applied the simple secrets of champions and rose to stand among them. Being impressed by his obvious desire and determination to excel as a gospel seller, I wanted to visit his home and to see the full man. I had that opportunity. As we approached his humble country home, I was impressed with neatness and order. Everything was in place. There was a tranquility in the home. It seemed that heaven's atmosphere filled each room. The wife and the children were happy. "Would you exchange your present work for your former employment?" I asked. The answer was 1,000 times no. His work was easy and his burdens were light because he was dedicated. He was alert, faithful in labor, and a student of his work. He knew his books and journals and could explain them so that prospects realized that they would surely receive more than their money's worth. His rewards reached beyond his monetary income as the highest-selling literature evangelist in his union. He, his wife, and children were enjoying the nearest blessings to heaven itself. Of course, the devil tried him, but like any true champion, he never switched sides. Other literature evangelist champions whom I have had opportunity to meet and observe on different occasions are Mrs. Annalisa Halavata and Mrs. E. Pekaranen. Mrs. Halavata is the first literature evangelist in the world to deliver more than $100,000 worth of subscription books and journals in 1 year. Mrs. Pekaranen is second highest in world sales in gospel selling. Among their many excellent techniques are the following principles. 1. Acceptance of God's call to service as a guarantee to success in missionary service. Number 2. Complete trust in God and in His promises. Number 3. Belief in the need to prepare to serve. Champions for God are not always persons whom the world would honor. They are those who in God's sight have placed their interests and affections on things above, not on the things of this world. Let me ask you now that you have learned some of the secrets of champions, why don't you join them? You too can stand with the champions. You can do this by adopting the following principles for success. First, choose God as your partner and guide. Second, choose to help humanity. Third, choose to be true to duty. Fourth, choose to make proper use of your time. Fifth, choose to be diligent. Finally, let me ask you a very soul-searching question. What will you do with the rest of your life? May I suggest that you join the champions by giving your life and your talents completely to God for His service. In so doing, you will make the happiest discovery and the greatest decision of your life. Do it today. Stand with the champions.
Elder J.N. Hunt, Associate Publishing Secretary of the General Conference, enjoys nothing more than working side by side with a literature evangelist. Wherever he has served, at home and overseas, he gets into the homes with the literature workers and tries to understand what moves the minds of people to buy our publications. He has a special burden to help literature evangelists increase their closing percentages. Joe Hunt, what is the master technique in getting a decision after the prospect starts hesitating and putting off a decision to buy?
I will never forget a big week thrill in the little mining town of Uravan, western Colorado. It happened right at the crucial point of the sales interview with Mrs. Bennett, the outstanding Sunday school teacher of the community. She loved the Bible stories. Her children were at the ideal age to get maximum benefit from the set. Her tastefully furnished home indicated an adequate income. There was really no good reason why she shouldn't buy. But the normal human reaction had set in. It was that wretched shadow behind every sales objection, the inclination to stall or postpone a decision to buy. So she talked about her husband not being present, about all the material she already had, and so on. I prayed earnestly that the Holy Spirit would help me to say the right things to move this fine Christian lady to make the right decision. I knew that Satan was using his delaying tactics, urging reasons why it should not be accepted. I reached up for the mighty power of the Holy Spirit and the angelic host to oppose his suggestions. The Lord helped me to speak kindly. Mrs. Bennett, I can see you are the kind of mother who really wants to put the most important things first in the lives of your children. You wouldn't hold back anything that would help them win in the battle against evil, would you? Now just think for a few moments how investing in this beautiful Bible story library affects the children. These youngsters, watch us so very carefully. They see what we buy, what we value the most, what we put first, and generally they value most what we value most. So when parents invest in something extra special like this on the Bible, it leaves a wonderful impression on their children's minds. It makes them think, wow, Mom and Dad really believe the Bible is the big and important thing. And when they grow up with this idea, you can be pretty sure that the Bible and the Savior it reveals will always be the center of their lives. Mrs. Bennett smiled and blurted out her response. If you keep talking like that, you're going to have me buying these books. The Lord did help me to keep on talking like that. That is, picturing the future results in the lives of her children. And in just a few moments, she was writing out the check. Aren't you experiencing some of on the verge of a decision prospects like Mrs. Bennett nearly every day? And isn't it exasperating to verbally spank yourself all the way to the next prospect, muttering, they almost decided, why didn't I close that sale? So many start stalling and echoing the excuses that Satan subtly suggests to their minds. Think it over a few days. Go ahead and leave your name and address. This fellow is not far. You can decide later. Get in touch with him. Anything to put off a decision. And the destiny of a sale and a prospect's soul trembles in the balances. And we must at this point allow the Holy Spirit to take charge and God's love to overrule. We must bring into play the master technique for moving minds to action. That is, picture the future blessings that will come in buying the books, contrasted with the possible loss or regret as a result of putting off a decision to buy. The Master himself used this principle repeatedly to compel his listeners to choose for the right. Read the closing appeal of his great Sermon on the Mount. You remember the sensible man who hears Jesus' words and acts upon them is pictured as building a house on a rock, happy and secure, while the one who hears but fails to act is pictured as foolishly building on the sand, miserable and lost. It's quite a contrast. The Lord will help you also to paint similar contrasts with words to help us move the minds of our prospects to decisions. Here are a few appeals for action which have helped successful literature evangelists conquer objections and increase their closing percentages. First of all, as we give these appeals, we must remember to radiate that absolute spirit of confidence and belief. A sales manager explained the secret of the success of a Texas champion salesman called Joe Bolin. He was completely oblivious to the word no. Sometimes, he said, he would say to a prospect who objected, now that you have that off your chest, let's get down to business. How many of these would you like? We must likewise radiate that undaunted atmosphere of expectancy. Inspiration, in fact, urges us to talk and act as if your faith was invincible. Make sure there is no delay in getting out your order pad. Then take out your ballpoint pen and click it into position. And start writing the date or your name on the contract pad. Let them hear and see that you expect them to choose a binding or payment plan or a date. In the new Pacific Union Pictorial Prospectus, there are a number of charts or pictures that will help us to use this big principle in closing. The big principle is picturing the blessings with the books versus the possible regret or loss if they don't have the books. For instance, show the picture of that bewildered little boy with evil influences pressing in on his life, contrasted with the same little boy confidently smiling because a strong ring of spiritual training has thwarted all of these darts of the devil. Then say something like this: these two pictures remind us of two homes that were contacted recently by our representatives. This one on your right represents the son of one of our customers. He grew up with a set of Uncle Arthur's beautiful stories in his late teens. After high school, he made a decision to become a minister. Just as he was going away to Bible college, he put a hand on his mother's shoulder and said, "Mom, do you know what helped me to make my decision to give my life to God more than anything you did for me in life?" She wondered what it could be. He said, "Mom, it was that set of books you got for me when I was small and took time to read to me." You can be sure she had to swallow a big lump in her throat, and she thanked God that she had not neglected the part that counts most in a boy's life. You can be sure that that mother wouldn't take 1,000, no, not even $1 million for what her set helped her to do for her son's life. Now the picture on the other side here, on the left, represents a neglected lad that one of our representatives found living with a pad of hippies. He decided to show the books to the entire group. Most of them made fun of him, but this one boy got quite serious, and he spoke out. He said, "Now listen, fellows, you know what? If my mom and dad had gotten me something like this when I was a boy, I don't think I would be here with you. I wouldn't be living like I am today." And I believe he was right. So many homes today have time and money for everything except the one big thing that really counts in a child's life. Mr. and Mrs. Good, wouldn't it be wonderful a few years from now to have little Mark or Debbie put a grown-up arm around your shoulders and say, "Dad, Mom, you sacrificed something to make the Bible beautiful and important to us. You know, you always put the first things first. Thanks a million." That would be worth any sacrifice, wouldn't it? And it would be so much better than to have one of them point at you later and say, "If you'd only done so-and-so, I wouldn't be in the trouble I am in today." It is so much better to be glad you did a little extra on the Bible than to wish later you had done more. This appeal really moves the hearts of true Christian parents to a positive decision. Here are a few more that are especially effective when the prospects say they want to think it over for a few days. But Mr. and Mrs. Waite, when it comes to the things of God, it is always dangerous to put off a decision. If the devil can get us to procrastinate, it gives him time to crowd in with 100 less important things. And before we realize it, our children have passed the tender years, and he's cheated both us and our children out of the best and happiest things of life. Paul tells us that we are fighting a deadly war against the rulers of darkness of this world. It's really a fight to the finish for the souls of our children. And in wartime, to delay is usually to give the advantage to the enemy. That is why we are urging you to act now. These beautiful Bible books will reinforce that shield of faith wherewith Paul says we can quench all the fiery darts of the enemy. Then just finish writing up the order. Now here's another that has a real appeal. Try this sometime. Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, in just 4 or 5 years, little Gary and Susan will be up in their teens. It may be just 3 or 4 years, depending on the age of the children. It almost makes us shudder to think about it, doesn't it? And they are sure to have more temptations than we had when we went through those uncertain years of life. But just imagine now for a few moments how much strength and power these books will bring into their lives during these next few years. Each year, as you go through the Bible story set again with little Gary and Susan, it adds another layer of spiritual strength and power around their hearts. point to that ring of spiritual training in the prospectus. After going through these 4 or 5 times, this protecting ring becomes sturdy as steel and will help them to stand steady and unmoved amidst the teenage crowd. When Mom and Dad aren't there to help them anymore, they will have something to fall back on. They will have strength on their own to choose the right. They will be respected and looked up to as clean, upright, fine Christian young people. How proud and how happy you'll be. And I can assure you that you will thank yourself 1,000 times that you sacrificed whatever is necessary in order to make God's Word really live in their young lives. During Big Week recently, the Lord gave me another useful little appeal. You might like to try this. Have you ever heard the story of the townspeople in this mountain village who argued about whether they should build a fence around the top of the cliff or provide an ambulance down in the valley after the children had fallen over? There are so many dangerous cliffs and pitfalls for our young people today, aren't there? And how many millions of dollars are being spent to rehabilitate these wrecked young lives? The fence on the cliff at the top is so much more effective. With these beautiful Bible story books, you are building those fences at the top. You are investing in that which counts most in young lives, that which will prevent the pitfalls of life. And for every dollar you spend here, you can be sure you will save hundreds, perhaps thousands of dollars in rehabilitation costs later. So friends, literature evangelists, keep on painting these clear pictures of future benefits in the minds of your prospect. It is the great technique in moving human minds to decision. Pray that the Holy Spirit will help you speak vivid words of power that will win a sales battle for heaven. Recently, the Lord helped me to picture these joys and benefits with the books versus the dangers without the books to a Baptist dairy farmer whose wife kept holding back. He responded beautifully and turning to her spoke persuasively. He said, "But honey, what if we don't get these and something goes wrong? We'll always feel sorry we didn't do more for our children." And then looking me straight in the eye, he eloquently voiced his decision. "Mr. Hunt, I will gladly sell everything I own to help my children know Christ and be ready for heaven." It was a beautiful response. He immediately got his checkbook and paid for the entire set. God's power had won out again over Satan's negative suggestions for delay. Bookman friend, why not let him help you keep talking like that, picturing the future benefits to move their minds to decisions, and you'll have more of your prospects buying these books too.
Elder W.A. Higgins was the mastermind behind the beautiful sales instruction series entitled Like a Mighty Army, and a beautiful recruiting film entitled Trees That Talk. Probably no man around the world has contributed more in the way of real professional sales training for literature evangelists than Elder Higgins, former General Conference Associate Publishing Secretary. Bill Higgins, give us the prose summary for a truly successful sale.
Hello, bookman friend. Congratulations to you for your desire to do better work. Success, ever-increasing success, can be yours in this, the greatest business in the world. Today, we wish to present a brief summary for a successful sale. What are the important things to consider? First, you, the bookman. As a Christian salesman, you are the greatest human factor in the sale. I say human because we must ever recognize that this is God's work, and only as we prepare ourselves and receive heaven's approval and constant help can we be successful. And only as we do our very best can we expect God to do the rest. Therefore, you first must recognize that you're called to a sacred task, not just a job, but a service opportunity that can and will affect lives of countless men and women, boys and girls, for time and for eternity. What a challenge. Your attitude about your work will be reflected in voice, look, and action, and will be a powerful influence upon the prospect. A woman told her husband at the supper table about the visit of a young man earlier in the day. "He asked me if I were a Christian," she said. The husband responded, "Why didn't you tell him to mind his own business?" "If you had seen and heard him, you would have felt it was his business," the wife answered. "Yes, you're on the Master's business, and you must prepare yourself every day by prayer and study, including a reading of the portion of the literature you sell. This will give you a renewed appreciation for the literature and added confidence as you appeal to people to purchase it. You must ever remember you are doing the people a favor, the greatest favor in the world, when you take the literature to them and urge them to accept it. Everything about you makes an impression, and you have only one chance to make a good first impression, which is the most lasting, incidentally. How careful, then, you must be. One big impression is made by the way you look. How should the literature evangelist look? Well-groomed, clean and neat, but no extremes of style or color. Your attire must not call attention to itself and thus distract from your message. You must endeavor in the first 1 or 2 minutes to so win the confidence of the prospect that you may have his undivided attention as you present the purpose of your call. Your prospect is human, with the usual fears, concerns, and potential objections. Therefore, win his confidence. Do this by finding a way to his heart. Be courteous. Be sincere. Show respect. Someone has well said, "Every person you meet is wearing a secret badge which reads, 'Please make me feel important.' This you can do by asking questions, by being interested in them and their work or hobbies, by being observing and giving sincere compliments. Having won a friend and his confidence, now proceed with the purpose of the visit, but do this with tact and with dispatch. Remember, Ellen White said, 'Tact and good judgment increase the usefulness of the laborer 100-fold. The way you introduce your work may well decide how the interview will end. What you say during the next 90 seconds could well make the sale easy, or difficult, or even impossible. To get attention and an open mind, talk briefly about a problem or need that is very real and one which can be solved by the literature which you offer. Often men and women have not had the problem clearly analyzed and are not aware of the real situation, nor have they been conscious of their urgent need for help. When they truly sense this, the climate is favorable to proceed with the demonstration of your literature. Having presented the need or problem, your next step is to prove that your product or service will help meet that need. How can you best do this? Here are 10 big rules. 1. Get the undivided attention of each person in the room. How can this best be done? Ask each person to sit in front of you where they can see your display, children and old people included, and do sit close enough so all can see. The eye appeal is very strong. Try to avoid competition from radio or TV. How? Say, am I interfering with one of your favorite programs? Pointing to the TV. Often they will say, oh no, I didn't realize it was turned on. And hopefully they will quickly turn off the set. These are important matters that have a great effect upon the presentation, but they must be handled with skill and a sincere thank you. To sell better, show while you tell. Number 2, your canvas must be skillfully presented. Know your presentation perfectly, so well that it sounds like your own words. A well-prepared canvas will cover the vital points in a logical sequence, which is much easier for the mind to follow, and it actually saves time. Number 3, speak clearly and with feeling. A good voice gets and holds attention. One very successful literature evangelist reports that he reads aloud 10 minutes each day. He reads from the books he sells and tries to enunciate his words carefully. He emphasizes key words. He watches the punctuation marks. So while he learns more about the value of the subject matter in his books, he is improving his speaking voice. Wise bookman. No wonder he became a highly successful worker. Oh yes, when presenting the canvas, don't talk to the prospects, talk with them. Let it appear as a conversation, not a lecture. Get participation by asking questions, or merely ask for assent by saying, "Isn't that so?" Or perhaps you've noticed that, haven't you? They can say yes, and by so doing they feel they have a part in the interview. And you can tell much concerning their interest by the tone of the voice or the look on their face. Number 4, watch the prospects, all of them if there are more than one in the room. This helps you hold their attention and also enables you to detect the points that interest them most. This does not mean that you are never to look at your book. You may take a quick look down at each change of page, pointing with the finger, or better still with a pencil, emphasizing the page or the title or the most important feature on the page. Then you should move your eye back to the eye of the prospect. You speak with earnest eyes as well as with convincing words. And 4 or 5 times during the average interview, you should use the prospect's name. He will be pleased and will give better attention. Anticipate common objections and endeavor to answer them in the canvas before they are voiced. Once the prospect states an objection, he may tend to defend it, even though you have a good answer. If, however, an objection is made, recognize it and answer it briefly. In most cases, it can be turned around and used as a selling point. That is the boomerang method. Example, objection. We're too busy to read. Answer, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mrs. Blank. You see, the author must have had busy people in mind when preparing this service, because you can read a whole chapter or story in just a few minutes. And look how important this subject is. Now show other features or subjects and go right on selling. The prospect will often quickly forget the objection. Many objections are not really valid. Point number 6, show how to use. Here is one of the most powerful selling methods. One good example here may well be worth more than several minutes of talking. Show how to use the index. Show how a Sunday school teacher can use it in her class. How a pastor can find sermon material. How parents can use them to instruct children. how the books can be used in family worship. In showing how to use the service, let the prospect get into the act. Let him find the page. This will convince him he can use it himself. It is here that sales stories can be used effectively. Tell how others are using and appreciating the service. A Sunday school teacher bought the Bible story set because the pictures were large enough to show to her class of 10 students, and also because the 409 stories would give her a new story each week for almost 8 years. Share sales stories like this with other literature evangelists and find out what they're saying that can be helpful to you. Number 7, use testimonials. People are influenced by what others say and do. Some testimonials may be used early in the interview to establish confidence. Others may be used during the interview to support a claim or selling point. Written testimonials may be shown effectively. Try to underline the pertinent portions so as to direct attention there quickly. Verbal testimonials can often be used effectively and will add variety to the presentation. Often, a delicate point can be made more palatable by quoting a third party that supports your view, such as the lady who challenged her husband by saying, "You spend almost $200 a year for cigarettes that hurt you. Why can't we spend $150 for this set of books that will help the whole family?" He surrendered. They bought. Had the literature evangelist made the same statement, there could well have been trouble. Number 8, be sincere. Be enthusiastic. If people see and feel that you're deeply in earnest about your product, they will not think of you as just another salesman, which you aren't, but they will catch the spirit of urgency and will be impelled to listen. I remember presenting the canvas to a certain prospect, and then when I was about 1/3 of the way along, she said, "You talk like you believe that." I replied, "I most certainly do." She said, "That's enough. I'll take it." There is no substitute for sincerity and enthusiasm. How do you get and keep these qualities? The book called Porter Ministry tells how. Listen. When men realize the times in which we are living, they will work as in the sight of heaven. The canvasser will handle those books that bring light and strength to the soul. He will drink in the spirit of those books and will put his whole soul into the work of presenting them to the people. His strength, his courage, his success will depend on how fully the truth presented in the books is woven into his own experience and developed in his character. When his own life is thus molded, he can go forward representing to others the sacred truth he is handling. Imbued with the Spirit of God, he will gain a deep, rich experience, and heavenly angels will give him success in the work. What promises! Be sure you qualify to receive them. Number 9, get favorable decisions as you go. The final big yes is really the sum total of several smaller yeses as you have proceeded. Example, perhaps you've thought about that, haven't you? Yes. Aren't these beautiful illustrations? Yes. You can see how this would be helpful in teaching, can't you? Yes. Isn't the print clear, Mrs. Blank? Yes. Wouldn't it be a happier world if every family took time to have family worship with a book like this? Yes. Get the prospect in the habit of agreeing, of saying yes. Sales are made on agreements, not disagreements. The big decision calls for action. Without a sale, your interview is largely lost. But at this delicate point, what is the best way to proceed? A, summarize the high points. The prospect has heard them only once, and minutes have passed. In 30 seconds, bring several vital points back into focus. Start by saying, as I mentioned, Mrs. Blank, this plan offers these features. This quickly reminds her of the high points. B. Exalt the value of the books. Compare with the cost of encyclopedias. Compare with the problem of sickness or the cost of hospital bills. Compare with the cost and tragedy of juvenile delinquency. Make the costs seem small. Perhaps refer to the small monthly payments. C. Ask confidently for decisions, but ask indirectly. Say which binding or which payment plan, cash or monthly payments. Do not be afraid to ask for the order more than once if necessary. D. Talk success. Show a list of your customers. Tell how others are buying and paying for theirs. Help the prospect to rationalize the decision to buy. So many things they buy are very temporary. These books last a lifetime. The results could be called eternal. E. If the wife will not and cannot buy without the husband's consent, make an appointment to see him the same evening if possible. But don't give up too quickly. Many wives have their own money to spend. Use several good reserve points if necessary. F. Keep the whole interview deeply spiritual. This will help you to avoid meeting many objections and will make the close of the sale much easier. Pray while you canvass. Prayer with the prospect will prove a blessing to them and to you. 10. Maintain the attitude of success. God works with those who plan for, pray for, work for, and expect success. People tend to live up to your expectations of them. So look, talk, and act success. Keep growing every day. The biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. Remember, champions are people who prepared for and expected to succeed. What have we discussed in this summary of a successful sale? How do we do it? How is it achieved? The salesperson himself is a most vital part. Be your best today, but be better tomorrow. You must get and hold the undivided attention with a good canvas, a pleasing voice, and with visual aids. You must watch the prospect. Eye contact is powerful. Be a specialist in heading off or answering objections. Objections can help you sell if handled correctly. Give specifics on how the prospect can use the literature. Show how. Never underestimate the value of testimonials. Start a fire. How? By being on fire yourself. Get your prospect in the habit of saying yes on minor points. Get action, favorable action. Ask for it. Champions always expect success. Get ready and go. And heaven will help you. Many literature evangelists could very realistically increase their sales 50 to 100% or more if they really took their work seriously and determined to do the things that make champion bookmen. I'm talking to you. Are you listening? Good. Then decide right now what you need to do better. And go after it. Remember, no one will do better until he wants to.